This will be a introduction to the game I made called The Stone Path. It's somewhat a universal role-playing game. That is, you could have anything happen. You could have anything for characters. All you really have to do is find a way to put your head around it. Um, it is a game centered on resource management and negotiation or argument. You do need a moderator, and it's best with at least 2 players and the moderator, so 3 people total is best as a minimum. You can have more people. It depends on how many counters you're going to have. I would suggest probably no more than 5 players. So with it, you'll need 10 different colored counters, as you see in the picture. You grab the colored glass beads that you can put in aquariums or marbles or whatever you find appropriate. I mean, you can even buy funny money and put letters on it if you want, like those plastic coins. Whatever you find is appropriate for counters. You just need 10 different types. And then you need a bunch of 1 die, either D8s, 8-sided dice, or D10s, 10-sided dice. With this game, if you ever roll the maximum amount for the die, if you roll an 8 on an 8-sided die or a 10 on a 10-sided die, it has what's called exploding dice. You might be familiar with it from other game systems. If I'm correct, Shadowrun has exploding dice. And again, that's if you roll the maximum on the die, then you continue to roll the die and you add the results. So that is, you could have on a 10-sided die a result of like 22. Now, when you're using these dice, it's for, like in many games, a chance, success, or failure. If you're using the 8-sided die, I would suggest 6 as the target, so you need a 6 or more to succeed. If you're using a 10-sided die, I would suggest 7 as a target. That is, you would have to roll 7 or more to succeed. Depending on the quality of a person's argument, you can raise or lower the target, but that's the baseline. Now, if you do have your dice explode, you can do, as the moderator, one of 2 things. You can either have them keep rolling and count each success as a success. You can add it on as one great success. Or, for example, if you have an 8-sided die and you need 6 to succeed and their total roll is a 14, then that would count as 2 successes. However you wish to do it. Now, for the 10 different colored counters, they represent the 10, resources that each person may or may not have. They're not guaranteed to have all of them. Upon character creation, they get to choose 3 and then a 4th, and they'll be guaranteed 4 of those attributes in their little resource pool. The rest are all by chance. Starting off with blood. Blood is the resource that directly correlates with your character's health. If your character doesn't have blood in their pool of attributes, and they don't start off with any blood, then their character is sealed or unavailable or dead. And that's basically how you lose your character too, is if you run out of blood in the course of gameplay. Unless, of course, you have a special character or being, in which case you just have to make an argument as to why your character would still exist without blood. Like if your character's a robot or an android or a ghost or something like that. But there's got to be something that will cause your character to cease functioning when you are out of. In most people's case, it'll be blood. Now, the next one up is breath. Breath basically ties into any time your character is going to have some sort of a stamina or a battery or mana or like ki. It's what would be used in spell casting. It's what would be used in again, feats of stamina like long distance running or a sustained combat or something like that. But that's what breath is for. Any sort of bank of energy or stamina that your character might have. Next is warrant. Warrant is kind of a key part of the game too. Warrant is the 3rd resource pool, and it deals with items. Like if you have loose items like, daggers, or even it could be used for money. And it's also used for repeat arguments. Like let's say if you had to jump over a canyon and you made a successful argument and the resources to jump over that canyon. and you get done with your adventure and you have to come past the canyon again. Well, you did it before, you should be able to do it again. That's what you would use warrant for. Also, if you are fighting enemies and you are going to loot them, the moderator might just give you a certain amount of warrant tokens to represent their gear. There's not really a solid setting for what the warrant is. It's pretty fluid. Again, like bartered currency or items. So you could say you're fighting a spearman, and the moderator, when you're done, gives you a token of warrant representing that enemy's spear, and later on you use it as money. That's fine, that's part of the game. Or later on you could use it as a spear, and then later on you could use it as a piece of armor. It's basically, you would need warrant to signify your inventory or your spending power. Deceit. Deceit is the fourth resource, and as it states, it deals with lying and illusion. Anytime you want to make a false argument, a flat-out false argument, you're going to want deceit, which is why it's good for illusionists or con men, or to give you an example, if you wanted to make the argument of, I can fly, and the moderator says, you're a regular human being, although that's probably not the character you'd be playing, why can you fly? And you throw them some deceit, and you tell them, I could always fly. So deceit can be pretty powerful. It depends on the moderator as to how much they'll accept lie arguments, just flat out lies, but you would need deceit to push those lies. Pact is the fifth type of resource, and Pact deals with any contracts, calling in debts, having summons, if you hire goons or mercenaries. Anytime there is some sort of obligation as a part of your character, whether it's fulfilling a code as motivation or, again, servants that answer to you, that's what Pact is for. So let's say you are a sniper and you have a spotter with you. All of your spotter's actions could generally be paid for with Pact. It's the price for playing multiple beings on your character, rather than just being a single entity. Tiers. Tiers are the sixth resource pool, and they can often be confused with breath, but really tiers represent skills that you have worked hard for. An example, if you're going to have a martial artist breaking through bricks, or what do they call them? Clay tiles. If you have a martial artist breaking through clay tiles, they would probably use tiers to represent the hard work and training that they have done to master that skill. It's not really an endurance thing, it's a skill thing. Or back to the sniper. It doesn't take a lot of endurance to fire the right shot. It takes skill. That's what tiers would be for. Lineage is the seventh resource pool. And lineage deals with, if you're playing a character whose race is important, for example, if you wanted to play, we'll say, orcs, trolls, elves, etc., etc., and you wanted racial qualities to come in, like night vision or heat vision or something like that, that's where you're going to need the lineage pool. Anytime you're going to try to do something according to your birth, that's where you're going to need lineage tokens. It can also deal with royalty. In one case, we had a guy that played an Aeromancer, like a Windbander from the Avatar series, and his lineage played a large role into that because it was a family ability, so he was a multi-generational Aeromancer, and he could freely interchange lineage with breath when he was using his wind abilities. Hatred is the eighth resource pool. Hatred basically deals with additional potency of attack. I'm going to go with a lot of the pop culture, whether it's your superhero television shows or anime or cartoons, where they're just more effective because they're angry. Anytime that you want to increase the potency of your attack action, and you can't make any other argument than, righteous anger or rage or an apprehensive motivation, that's when you would use hatred to increase the, again, effectiveness of your attack. Ignorance. Ignorance is the 9th pool of resources. Ignorance is the opposite of hatred. Ignorance is to boost your defense potency. Ignorance, along with warrant, would signify like shield and armor or barriers. Basically, it's any argument that you would be using to shed damage or not pay attention to the damage, which is why I call it ignorance. Magic resistance, anything like that is going to come down or out of ignorance generally. So if you want to play a tank character, a meaty tank character, you're probably going to want blood and ignorance. Lastly comes wisdom. Wisdom is special. Not often do you have a person using wisdom in gameplay. They generally use it up at the beginning or at the end of gameplay. Wisdom is the 10th resource pool, and you don't necessarily need tokens for it because it's not often used unless you want to. It has 2 separate purposes. You could quite literally use it for knowledge in-game. Like, let's say if you have a group of people going through ruins or going through a spaceship and one of the characters has wisdom in their resource pool, they can use it as an argument to the moderator to get a layout of the place in advance, as if they've been there before. However, it's kind of expensive like that for any of this omnipotent metagame knowledge that you can acquire with wisdom, because for the character and the character sheet mostly, you are heavily relying on your arguments. There's not a lot of skills. It's pretty much whatever you say you want to do, and then the GM or the moderator asks why you think you can do it, and you offer up your argument and your resources. But in the case of wisdom, if you expend wisdom at any time, you can write down these set skills on your character sheet. You can tie them to your attributes. For example, if you had the sniper and you want the sniper to have rifle marksmanship, and that's a learned skill, something that they will never leave, well, then you would expend wisdom and write that down on your character sheet. And later on, when you make arguments that deal with marksmanship, because you spent wisdom on it, wisdom that you won't get back, the moderator can ask you, well, why can you make this good shot with your marksmanship? And you point to your character sheet and you say, well, it's a learned skill. It's never going to leave me. Now, as far as the mechanics of the game, I've been hinting before, that's basically how it works, is as the story moves forward or as the setting moves forward, any challenges that come up can be determined by successes of the dice roll backed by arguments and counter-arguments. The moderator is going to ask you something like, how do you think you can get past this door? And you're going to say, well, I'm going to use a fireball and I'm going to blow through the door. And the moderator will say, well, how is it that you can throw a fireball? In which case you would either point to your fireball skill and offer up some breath in the form of mana to cast the spell to blow the fireball and knock the door down, or you could offer up some deceit and say, well, a fireball appears magically out of nowhere, or you could offer up something like some pact and have a lackey do it for you. There's a lot of room for these arguments, and you'll get creative, especially if you're in a group. You'll get creative, and it's very much play to the judge. If you make arguments that the moderator likes, you'll have to offer up fewer resources. Now, why would you offer up resources? Well, every time you exchange a token, you get an experience point. The only tokens you get credit for at the end of the game are as if you spend wisdom tokens before the close of the game, or if you've collected unspent warrant. So, within the course of gameplay, it benefits you very much to try to spend down to 0 at the very end. You want to be effective. It really has motivated players that I've run with to use their resources during gameplay, whereas normally, in many, especially pen and paper roleplays, they hoard their resources. If, and this was a trope given to me by my friends, if you go out of your way as a GM to elucidate that there is this stick on the side of the road that smells a bit like poop, then your players will grab that, put it in their bag, and they'll have it in their bag for their next 50 levels because they thought it was important. Players don't like to use resources. Well, this is a resource-heavy game.